Picture this. It's 1965. The Beatles are conquering America. Bob Dylan is going electric, and the airwaves are alive with sounds that would define generations. 60 years later, these songs still move us, still transport us back to a time when music was changing everything. Today, we're celebrating 10 legendary tracks that are turning 60 this year. Songs that didn't just top the charts, they became the soundtrack to our lives. Number 10. Turn, Turn, Turn by the Byrds. The Byrds took ancient words and made them timeless. Pete Seeger had adapted the biblical text from Ecclesiastes years earlier, but when the Byrds got their hands on it in 1965, they transformed it into something entirely new. Roger McGuinn's 12-string Rickenbacker guitar created that distinctive jangly sound that would influence countless bands for decades to come. The song captured the spirit of the times perfectly. America was changing rapidly. The civil rights movement was gaining momentum. The Vietnam War was escalating, and young people were questioning everything their parents had taught them. The Byrds managed to take words written thousands of years ago and make them speak to a generation searching for meaning in turbulent times.
Time to kill, a time to heal.
What made this track special wasn't just the harmonies or the instrumentation, though both were revolutionary. It was how the Byrds bridged the gap between folk music's message and rock's energy. They proved that electric guitars and traditional songs could work together, paving the way for what we now call folk rock. The success of this song established the Byrds as major players in the music scene and showed that there was room for thoughtful, spiritual music in the rock world. It reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and stayed there for 3 weeks, proving that audiences were hungry for music with substance. Number 9. Like a Rolling Stone by Bob Dylan.
So fine, through the bumps of dime in your prime.
When Bob Dylan walked into Columbia Studios in June 1965, he was about to record a song that would change everything. At over 6 minutes long, radio stations initially balked at playing it. The length alone broke every rule about what a hit single should be. But this wasn't just any song. It was a masterpiece that redefined what popular music could accomplish. Dylan had been the voice of the folk movement, armed with just his acoustic guitar and harmonica. But by 1965, he was ready to plug in and turn up the volume. The decision sent shockwaves through the folk community. Some fans felt betrayed.
Never understood that it ain't no good. You shouldn't let up.
But Dylan knew he had to follow his artistic vision wherever it led. The song's structure was unlike anything on the radio. It built and swirled, driven by Mike Bloomfield's electric guitar and Al Cooper's organ. Dylan's voice carried a new kind of intensity. Part singing, part preaching, part confrontation. He was challenging not just his subject, but everyone listening. The impact was immediate and lasting. The song reached number 2 on the charts and proved that rock music could be as complex and meaningful as any art form. It opened doors for longer songs, more sophisticated lyrics, and gave artists permission to experiment without worrying about commercial expectations. Number 8. Help by the Beatles.
I need somebody help, not just.
By 1965, the Beatles were the biggest band in the world. But success came with its own set of problems. John Lennon later admitted that behind the upbeat sound of this song was a genuine cry for help. The pressures of fame, constant touring, and living in the public eye were taking their toll.
If you can, I'm feeling down.
The song served as the title track for their second film, and it perfectly captured the frantic energy of Beatlemania. The harmonies were tight, the guitars were driving, and the whole thing moved with an urgency that matched the band's hectic lifestyle. It was pop perfection, but underneath the surface, there was something more vulnerable. What made the Beatles special wasn't just their ability to write catchy melodies, though they certainly had that gift in abundance. It was their willingness to be honest about their experiences, even when those experiences weren't entirely positive. They could take personal struggles and transform them into universal anthems. The song reached #1 in both the UK and the US, proving once again that the Beatles had their finger on the pulse of popular culture. But more importantly, it showed that even the most successful artists in the world sometimes needed support, making them more relatable to fans who were dealing with their own challenges. Number 7. My Girl by The Temptations. Motown was hitting its stride in 1965, and The Temptations were one of the label's brightest stars. Smokey Robinson wrote this song specifically for the group, and it became their signature tune. The combination of David Ruffin's passionate lead vocals and the group's smooth harmonies created something magical. The song's arrangement was deceptively simple. A gentle guitar line, subtle strings, and that unmistakable Motown rhythm section provided the foundation. But it was the way The Temptations delivered the song that made it special. Each member had a role to play, and together they created a sound that was both sophisticated and accessible. This track represented everything that made Motown great. Berry Gordy's vision of creating music that could cross racial boundaries was working. The song reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and became The Temptations' first pop chart topper. It proved that soul music could appeal to audiences everywhere. The influence of this song extended far beyond the charts. It helped establish the template for countless love songs that followed, and it showed that male vocal groups could be both tough and tender. The Temptations' performance style, their choreography, and their overall presentation influenced generations of performers who came after them. Number 6. Downtown by Petula Clark.
When you're alone and life is making you love.
British singer. Petula Clark was already a star in the UK when she recorded this Tony Hatch composition. But it was this song that made her an international sensation. The track captured the excitement of urban life in a way that felt both sophisticated and accessible. It was optimistic without being naive, energetic without being frantic. The production was sleek and modern, with a full orchestra that never overwhelmed Clark's warm, inviting voice. The song painted a picture of the city as a place of endless possibilities, where anyone could find excitement and connection. In 1965, as more people were moving to urban areas, this message resonated strongly.
Waiting for you tonight downtown.
Clark's performance was key to the song's success. She brought a maturity and confidence that set her apart from many of her contemporaries. She wasn't trying to be a teenager or appeal only to young audiences. Instead, she presented herself as a sophisticated woman who understood both the joys and challenges of modern life.
Somebody kind to help and understand you. Someone.
The song became a massive hit, reaching #1 in the US and making Clark the first British female artist to achieve that feat during the British invasion era. It proved that there was room for different types of artists in the changing musical landscape, and it helped pave the way for other international performers to find success in America. Number 5. Satisfaction by the Rolling Stones. The Rolling Stones had been working hard to establish themselves as more than just another British invasion band. They wanted to be dangerous, rebellious, and real. When Keith Richards woke up with the main riff for this song in his head, he knew they had something special. The song became their first #1 hit in the United States and established them as genuine rivals to the Beatles. The guitar riff was simple but unforgettable, and Mick Jagger's vocals carried a swagger that perfectly matched the band's image. The song expressed a kind of restless dissatisfaction that spoke to young people who felt disconnected from mainstream society. It wasn't just about romantic frustration, it was about feeling let down by a world that promised more than it delivered. The Stones' version of blues-based rock was grittier than what most other British bands were doing. They drew directly from American blues and R&B traditions, but they added their own edge and attitude. This song proved that they could take those influences and create something entirely their own.
I can't get no
The success of this track established the Rolling Stones as a major force in rock music. It showed that there was an audience for music that was a little rougher around the edges, a little more honest about life's disappointments. The song became an anthem for anyone who felt like the world owed them something better. Number 4. California Girls by The Beach Boys. The Beach Boys had already made their mark with songs about surfing and cars, but this track showed they were capable of something more sophisticated. Brian Wilson's production was getting more complex, and the group's harmonies were reaching new heights of perfection. The song captured the essence of California's youth culture, just as it was beginning to influence the rest of the world. Wilson's approach to recording was becoming increasingly ambitious. He was experimenting with different instruments, layering vocals in new ways, and creating soundscapes that had never been heard before. This song was a perfect example of his growing confidence as a producer and arranger. Well, East Coast girls are hit by really. The Beach Boys weren't just singing about California, they were selling it as a dream destination. The song painted a picture of endless summer, beautiful beaches, and carefree living that appealed to people everywhere, especially those stuck in cold climates or boring jobs. It was escapism at its finest. The track reached number 3 on the Billboard Hot 100 and helped establish the Beach Boys as more than just a novelty act. They were proving that American bands could be just as innovative and exciting as their British counterparts. The song's success helped pave the way for the even more ambitious projects Wilson would undertake in the coming years. Number 3. Mr. Tambourine Man by the Byrds. Bob Dylan wrote this song, but the Byrds made it their own. Their version took Dylan's abstract poetic lyrics and set them to a sound that was both folk and rock, traditional and modern. Roger McGuinn's 12-string guitar created a shimmering backdrop for harmonies that seemed to float on air. The song represented a perfect marriage of Dylan's literary sensibilities and the Byrds' musical innovations. Dylan's original version was more intimate and introspective, but the Byrds' arrangement gave it a sense of joy and celebration that made it accessible to a wider audience. They proved that complex, poetic lyrics could work in a rock context. All my senses have been stripped. This track helped launch the folk rock movement and showed that there was a market for intelligent, thoughtful music. It reached number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and established the Byrds as major players in the rapidly evolving music scene. The success of their Dylan covers also helped boost Dylan's own profile and introduced his songs to new audiences. Cast your dancing spell my way. The influence of this recording extended far beyond the charts. It showed other artists that they could take songs from different genres and reimagine them completely. The Byrds' approach to harmony and instrumentation influenced countless bands, and their success helped prove that American groups could be just as innovative as their British counterparts. Number 2. You've Lost That Lovin' Feelin' by The Righteous Brothers. Phil Spector's Wall of Sound production reached its peak with this recording. The song built from a quiet, intimate beginning to a massive orchestral climax that seemed to fill every available space. Bill Medley and Bobby Hatfield's vocals were perfectly suited to Spector's approach. They had the power and emotion to cut through the dense instrumental arrangements. The song was unusually long for a single at over 3.5 minutes, but radio stations couldn't resist playing it. The emotional intensity was overwhelming, and the production was unlike anything else on the radio. Spector had created a sound that was both incredibly complex and completely accessible.
Now there's no welcome look in your...
Barry Mann, Cynthia Weil, and Spector wrote the song specifically for the Righteous Brothers, and it fit their style perfectly. Medley's deep, soulful voice provided the foundation, while Hatfield's soaring falsetto added the emotional peaks. Together, they created a performance that was both technically impressive and deeply moving. The song became the duo's biggest hit, reaching #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 and staying there for 2 weeks. It proved that Spector's production techniques could work with the right artists and the right material. The song's success helped establish the template for dramatic, emotionally intense pop music that would influence artists for decades to come.
I'd get down on my knees for you.
Number 1. Yesterday by the Beatles.
Yesterday.
Paul McCartney woke up with this melody in his head, and it became one of the most recorded songs in history. The Beatles version was revolutionary in its simplicity. Just McCartney's voice, his acoustic guitar, and a string quartet. In a year when rock music was getting louder and more complex, this song proved that sometimes less really is more.
Now it looks as though they hit us.
The song marked a departure for the Beatles, who had built their reputation on energetic group performances. Here, McCartney was essentially performing solo, with the other band members absent from the recording. It was a bold move that showed the group's confidence in their individual talents as well as their collective strength.
There's a shadow hanging over me.
George Martin's arrangement was crucial to the song's success. The string quartet wasn't just background decoration, it was an integral part of the song's emotional impact. The arrangement enhanced the melancholy mood without overwhelming McCartney's intimate vocal performance.
She wouldn't say.
The song's success was immediate and lasting. It reached #1 in the US and became one of the Beatles' most beloved recordings. More importantly, it showed that the Beatles were capable of artistic growth and experimentation. They weren't content to repeat their early successes. They were constantly pushing themselves to explore new musical territories.
I said something wrong.
These 10 songs didn't just define 1965, they helped shape the decades that followed. They showed us that music could be both commercial and artistic, that it could speak to our hearts while challenging our minds. 60 years later, they still sound as fresh and vital as the day they were recorded. Each of these tracks represents a moment when an artist took a chance, tried something new, and created something lasting. They remind us why we fell in love with music in the first place, and why these songs will continue to move people for generations to come. If you enjoyed this journey back to 1965, make sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more musical memories. What's your favorite song from 1965? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, keep the music playing.